Fear, a distressing emotion, a feeling of impending danger. Whether real or imagined, the thought of a threat can leave us paralyzed with an unexplainable feeling. One man, who we will call James, due to his request for anonymity, has a fear of something that most of us barely notice: buttons. Tiny circles of plastic or metal that hold our clothing together. How can such a simple everyday object cause so much fear and dread in someone else? I'm Afzal Ahmed and this is Aloud. This show brings you articles made for audio. In this episode, we've adapted the piece Phobias, Why What Scares Us Can Feel Impossible to Explain by Paula Odek, published on TRT Africa English on November the 4th, 2025. In George Orwell's book 1984, the protagonist Winston Smith harbors a psychopathological fear of rodents. Nothing else can break him, not physical torture, not even death staring him in the face. In the book, there is a room where prisoners are forced to confront their deepest fears, a product of Orwell's insight into the utterly personal and often inexplicable nature of phobias. What paralyzes one person might seem absurd to another. James says the first time it happened was when he was barely 3 years old. His tiny fingers brushed a plastic button on his shirt, and a wave of dread shot through him. He didn't understand it. He just knew one thing. He never wanted to touch or even see a button again. Whenever he touched a button, he felt disgusted, he recalls. Growing up, people didn't understand and thought he was weird. His siblings teased him, neighbors laughed, and even his parents believed he was simply being difficult. He remembers a shirt his father bought him, one he liked, except for the buttons. His mother begged him to try it on, but he couldn't. Just looking at the buttons made his stomach twist. As he got older, he hid his fear like a crime, thinking that no one would take it seriously. At school, uniforms made life even harder. While other students wore neatly buttoned shirts, James found creative ways around the rules. Pullovers, t-shirts, anything that wouldn't send him into panic. According to the World Health Organization, phobias are irrational and uncontrollable fears triggered by an object, situation, or activity. Fears so overwhelming they can cause severe anxiety, panic, and avoidance. Phobias are common worldwide. Children can develop them early, but most begin between the ages of 15 and 20. Growing up in a small African town, James believed he was the only person in the world with such a strange problem. Then in secondary school, a classmate casually admitted he also couldn't stand buttons. James was stunned. For so long, he had thought he was the only one. It changed everything. He searched online and finally found a name for what had haunted him his whole life: kumpunophobia. A rare phobia often anecdotally estimated to affect roughly 1 in every 75,000 people. One that James has now lived with for more than 40 years. It was such a relief to know it's real, he says, to know he wasn't imagining it. Still, he rarely tells people. Even hearing the word button sends chills up his spine. He avoids buttons completely, cuts them off clothes, throws them away, wearing t-shirts and jeans only. He's not alone in finding unusual solutions. Apple co-founder Steve Jobs famously had a famous aversion to buttons, something reflected in both his clothing and Apple's minimalist hardware design. The WHO categorizes phobias into 3 main types. Number 1, social phobias, the fear of being watched, judged, or humiliated, from conversations to eating in public to speaking on stage. Number 2, agoraphobia, the fear of places where escape might be difficult, crowds, public transport, queues, or even leaving home. And number 3, specific phobias, fear triggered by a specific object or situation, such as flying, heights, animals, injections, or blood. Kumpunophobia falls into this category 3. But what causes phobias? The WHO says the reasons aren't fully understood, but genetics, traumatic childhood experiences like early separation, or frightening encounters with a specific object can play major roles. For example, being bitten by a dog can develop into a lifelong fear of dogs, and sometimes the cause is never identified at all. Phobias rarely fade on their own, but effective treatments exist. According to the WHO, the main approaches are exposure therapy, gently and safely confronting the source of fear, sometimes using virtual reality; cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, addressing distorted thoughts and replacing them with healthier ones; and medication used occasionally for severe phobias to calm emotional and physical reactions. Even sharing your phobia regularly with a professional helps. Self-help techniques recommended by the WHO also include meditation, yoga, breathing exercises, visualization, mindfulness, and progressive muscle relaxation. All of these help reduce anxiety and regain control over the body's panic response. For James, the struggle is less about treatment and more about being understood, because phobias often look irrational from the outside, but from the inside, they feel like prisons built from emotion, memory, and unexplained fear. And that's all for this episode of Aloud, based on the piece Phobias, Why What Scares Us Can Feel Impossible to Explain, by Paula Odek, published on TRT Africa English on November the 4th, 2025. I'm your host Afzal Ahmed. Thanks for listening.